The first rays of sunlight barely pierced the morning fog over Montgomery, Alabama. On March 22, 1990, 12-year-old Madeline Harper had left her home for the school bus, her backpack bouncing lightly as she waved goodbye to her mother, Claire Harper. It was a normal Thursday morning, or so it seemed. By noon, the quiet suburb had shifted into panic. Madeline never arrived at school at first. Claire assumed the worst. The bus might have been delayed, or perhaps Madeline had stayed behind to speak with a teacher. But when hours passed without any word, Claire's unease became unbearable. She called neighbors, friends, and the local police. The response was swift, but the answers were not. Detective James Collins, a young officer assigned to missing persons, remembered the early chaos clearly. "We had no leads, no witnesses, nothing," he would later recall. The streets had been quiet, the school bus routes normal, yet Madeline had vanished without a trace. The only clue left behind was her small notebook, open on the kitchen table, pages fluttering in the morning breeze from the open window. The notes were innocent sketches, little doodles of stars and flowers, but one page had her signature in pencil, underlined twice. Collins would later say, even then, there was a sense that someone had disrupted her life with purpose. Over the next few days, searches were organized. Volunteers combed the nearby woods, helicopters scanned the neighborhoods, and divers checked the swollen creek running behind the Harper's property. Nothing. The case quickly went cold. For Claire, every passing day was a living nightmare. "I kept thinking she was just hiding," Claire admitted decades later. "Every noise, every knock on the door. I hoped it was her coming back." By the end of 1990, the Montgomery Police Department had exhausted conventional leads. No fingerprints, no suspicious cars, no strangers seen in the area. Madeline's disappearance became a ghost in the system, an unresolved tragedy that lingered in every precinct file and in every neighbor's mind. For years, the Harper family clung to hope, even as their lives were quietly unraveling. Claire threw herself into her work, raising Madeline's younger brother, Ethan, alone. Friends drifted away, unable to endure the weight of the unknown. But Claire never stopped searching, never stopped questioning. She attended every missing persons meeting, every community awareness event, and even set up a small foundation in Madeline's name, hoping to keep her daughter's memory alive. Meanwhile, life in Montgomery continued as normal, or as normal as it could be, with an unresolved tragedy lurking in the background. People whispered about suspicious strangers, about cold eyes glimpsed in the night. Some blamed an outsider, while others quietly suspected someone close to home. But decades passed. The case files gathered dust, and Madeline Harper became a name only remembered by her family, a haunting echo of innocence lost. The turning point came unexpectedly, almost like fate. In 2019, a small envelope arrived at the Montgomery Police Department, sent by a retired evidence custodian who had preserved items from old cases. Inside were a pair of worn gloves and a fragment of hair collected during the initial investigation, meticulously stored for nearly 3 decades. It was a discovery that would reignite the investigation and eventually unravel the best decades-long mystery. Detective Lauren Bennett, newly assigned to the cold case unit, recognized the significance immediately. "In cases this old, every piece of evidence is a treasure," she said. Unlike modern cases, there were no digital trails, no social media footprints, no surveillance cameras. This fragment of hair, carefully preserved, might hold the only key to finally finding out what had happened to Madeline Harper. By late 2019, Advances in genetic genealogy and forensic science offered new hope. Unlike the original investigation in 1990, this approach didn't rely on eyewitnesses or conventional police work. Instead, it could identify individuals by tracing distant relatives, building family trees across generations, and uncovering truths hidden for decades. But even as hope sparked, there was an unsettling reality. The perpetrator might still be alive, still living among the people who had known Madeline, quietly walking past the very streets where she had disappeared. The thought sent shivers down every detective's spine. It's one thing to solve a crime on paper, Bennett reflected. It's another to realize that the person responsible may have lived a normal life, untouched by justice, while an entire family suffered in silence. And so, with the envelope of evidence in hand, the team prepared for what would become one of the most shocking resolutions in Alabama's criminal history: the hunt for Madeline Harper's kidnapper. The person who had silenced a child's laughter for 30 years was about to begin again, this time with tools and techniques her family could never have imagined in 1990. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. We cover real cold cases solved decades later, and your support helps bring these stories to light. It was a quiet October morning in 2019 when Detective Lauren Bennett sat at her desk, a cup of coffee in hand, staring at the small, faded envelope containing evidence from 1990. Inside were the delicate fragments, the gloves, and a single hair, preserved meticulously by the original investigators. To anyone else, these might have seemed like ordinary artifacts of an unsolved case. To Bennett, they were a potential lifeline, a chance to bring justice after nearly 3 decades of uncertainty. Bennett knew that conventional DNA testing would likely fail. After 29 years, degradation was inevitable. But she had something that hadn't existed in 1990: genetic genealogy, a groundbreaking method that could trace the DNA to distant relatives and ultimately reveal the perpetrator. She carefully documented the items, then sent them to Parabon Nanolabs, one of the few private labs specializing in forensic genetic genealogy. Weeks later, the preliminary report arrived. The hair yielded a partial DNA profile, fragmented, incomplete, but sufficient. The lab compared it against public genetic databases, looking for distant relatives of the unknown suspect. Within days, dozens of potential matches appeared, some as far removed as 3rd or 4th cousins. Dr. Elaine Wright, the genetic genealogist assigned to the case, explained the process in a later interview. Think of it like connecting the dots in a massive family tree. We may not have the suspect directly, but we can trace cousins, great-aunts, and distant relatives. From there, we work backward and forward across generations to pinpoint the likely individual. It was painstaking work. The team combed through birth records, marriage certificates, and census data, reconstructing family trees spanning nearly a century. Slowly, patterns emerged. One branch of the tree kept intersecting with Montgomery, Alabama, right around 1990. The researchers narrowed the suspect pool to 5 men who were in the area at the time and matched the DNA patterns. Detective Bennett cross-referenced these names with old police files, school records, and community archives. One name leaped out: Harold Mitchell, age 72 in 2019, retired school counselor and lifelong Montgomery resident. At first glance, he seemed unremarkable, volunteering at the local library. coaching youth soccer in the 1980s, known for his calm demeanor and friendly reputation. But the deeper Bennett dug, the more unsettling the picture became. Mitchell had been interviewed in 1990, during the original investigation, not as a suspect, but as a neighbor who occasionally saw Madeline walking to school. His statements were brief, but investigators at the time noted his meticulous attention to detail, almost excessively so. He described seeing a dark-colored van parked near Madeline's route, though he claimed to have no memory of exact dates. He had never been considered suspicious. Bennett realized that history had repeated itself. The true perpetrator was hiding in plain sight. The next challenge was confirming the DNA without tipping off Mitchell. The team employed a method used in other high-profile cold cases: covert collection of discarded items. Surveillance began immediately. For 3 days, officers watched Mitchell's routine visits to the grocery store, local coffee shop, and neighborhood library. Opportunity struck on the 4th day. Mitchell left a coffee cup behind at a cafe he frequented. Undercover officers collected it carefully, preserving the saliva residue for testing. The sample was rushed to the state crime lab. When the results came back, Detective Bennett could hardly believe it. The DNA matched the sample from 1990 with a probability of 99.9996%. After 29 years, Madeline Harper's abductor had been identified. Bennett's first thought was disbelief. "It can't be that simple," she admitted later. But the evidence was irrefutable. The investigation turned quickly from a cold case file to an imminent arrest operation. What made the case even more chilling was what they uncovered next. Harold Mitchell had spent the intervening decades building a perfectly normal life, completely integrated into the Montgomery community. He had been a school counselor for 25 years, advising children, mentoring families, and attending local PTA meetings. He volunteered at charity drives and local libraries, receiving community awards for decades of service. Meanwhile, the family of Madeline Harper had been living with an unresolved grief, trusting the community around them. Dr. Elaine Wright explained the psychology behind such behavior. Individuals like Mitchell are often highly organized, intelligent, and capable of compartmentalizing their lives. They commit a violent act and then construct an alternate persona life that appears ordinary, even exemplary. It's this duality that allows them to evade suspicion for decades. Even more disturbing, Mitchell had maintained subtle ties to the Harper family over the years. He had occasionally attended charity events where Claire Harper was present, always offering polite condolences, never revealing the secret he carried for decades. As the surveillance team prepared for the arrest, the tension in Montgomery was palpable. Bennett knew that the operation had to be precise. Mitchell was not only elderly but respected, meaning any misstep could spark chaos in the community. The countdown to justice had begun. It was a chilly March morning in 2020 when the quiet streets of Montgomery, Alabama, were suddenly filled with the hum of law enforcement activity. 6 unmarked police vehicles had pulled up outside Harold Mitchell's modest brick home. Neighbors peeked through blinds and over fences, their morning routines disrupted by the unusual sight of officers in tactical gear surrounding the property. Inside, 72-year-old Mitchell was preparing his morning tea, a ritual he had maintained for decades. The knock at his door came sharply at 7:41 a.m. "Harold Mitchell, Alabama State Police. You are under arrest for the 1990 murder of Madeline Harper," an officer said. Mitchell's hand trembled slightly as he set down the teacup he'd just poured, but his face remained eerily composed. He looked at the officers calmly and muttered, "Call my lawyer. Tell him it's about the Harper girl." As he was escorted outside, Detective Lauren Bennett thought back to the months of painstaking investigation. The pieces of the puzzle had finally aligned, revealing a truth decades in the making. Mitchell had lived among the community as a trusted school counselor, mentor, and volunteer. He had attended charity events, coached children, served on boards, and even joined local memorials marking anniversaries of Madeline Harper's disappearance. Nobody could have suspected the darkness he had carried so quietly for 30 years. The news of the arrest spread quickly. Former colleagues, neighbors, and parents of students expressed disbelief. How could a man so gentle and involved in the community be capable of such a crime? Social media and local news outlets buzzed with shock and speculation. Everyone who thought they knew Harold Mitchell now questioned everything about the man they had trusted. Investigators carefully reviewed his life. They discovered that even after Madeline's murder, Mitchell had meticulously maintained his public persona while keeping reminders of the crime hidden in his home. Mementos carefully concealed behind false panels in his basement suggested he revisited the event mentally throughout his life. A chilling confirmation of the dual existence he had led. Court proceedings began in April 2020. The DNA evidence and genealogical mapping left no room for doubt, and the defense quickly entered plea negotiations. On June 15, 2020, Harold Mitchell pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, finally bringing justice to a case that had haunted the Harper family for 3 decades. The Harper family, who had endured years of unanswered questions and grief, expressed a complex mix of relief and sorrow. Claire Harper, Madeline's younger sister, spoke on their behalf. For 30 years, we lived with an absence, the absence of answers, the absence of justice. Today, we close that chapter, but we cannot reclaim the years stolen from us. We hope this resolution brings some peace to others still waiting for answers. And we hope this story serves as a reminder that justice, even delayed, can be relentless. The case quickly became a learning point for law enforcement nationwide, demonstrating how new forensic techniques, persistence, and advances in genetic genealogy could solve cases once thought impossible. In Montgomery, schools and community groups created programs to honor Madeline's memory, promote safety, and teach about the lessons learned from decades of patience and persistence. Detective Bennett reflected, this case wasn't just about catching a criminal. It was about giving a family their voice after decades of silence. Madeline Harper's story reminds us that the truth has a way of emerging, no matter how long it takes. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you think about the case, the community's reaction, or any other cold cases you hope get solved. Each story we uncover helps bring justice, even after decades of waiting.